For round two. This talk will be about how to handle database updates. I still work at WikiTeq, last I checked, as an external contractor. Still named Daniel. You can still find information about me at Scherzer.dev if that hasn't crashed. Onward. Overview. We're going to start with terms. It'll be a different set of terms than last time, promise. Then I'm going to talk about how to mitigate downtime, which is one of the terms we'll define, in two different contexts. How the Wikimedia Foundation does it, from what I can tell as an outside observer, and how we do it for our clients. Then I'm going to talk about the database updates that fall in one of two scopes. Either you're updating from something within the last long-term support versions, or you're updating from something older. If you're upgrading to 1.43, that'd be anything from before 1.35 would be under that second scope. 1.31, 1.17. Talk about some pitfalls that we've seen in those upgrades, and then we'll end with a conclusion, different conclusion than last time, and questions. Hopefully different than last time, but if you want to ask me questions about fuzzing, that works too. Our terms. A database update is any maintenance that will also, that's supposed to say alter, the schema of the wiki. This is adding a column, removing a column, creating a new table, deleting a table, renaming an index, things like that. A schema migration is a set of database updates and the associated maintenance scripts that migrate from one schema to another, updating data storage. We had, for example, the actor migration. In previous versions of MediaWiki, you would store for each edit the user ID and the username associated with it. And for each log entry, the user ID and the username. And for each page move, that's in the log entry table, so bad example. But you would have, for every edit, you would need to store the username. And then if you wanted to rename a user, you would need to go through and update every single one of those entries, which led to, I think the script is called fix stuck global rename, because you would have to get sign off from the database administrators for renaming users with too many edits. It was a problem, and it was also a lot of duplicated space, or a lot of duplicated data taking up space. Current versions of MediaWiki have an actor table. Every user with an account and every IP address that have any entries anywhere in the wiki have a single actor ID. That way, when you want to rename a user, you need to rename their username in the user table and rename the user or the name field in the actor table, but the revision just holds a pointer to the actor ID, and the log entry just holds a pointer to the actor ID, and the archive table just holds a pointer to the actor ID. So that was one of the bigger schema migrations. Another one was the comment migration. For every edit that has an edit summary, that text would be stored, but occasionally people will use an edit summary that has been done before. There are only so many different ways to say, I fixed a typo. Now, every edit has a pointer or an ID for a comment that it allows for deduplication. Link targets is currently ongoing. This is, instead of a pointer or an ID for a title that exists, it's for a title that exists or like it could exist, and the reference should work the entire time. This is red links. When you create a link to a page that doesn't exist, it's stored as a page link so you can see, what are the most requested pages that don't exist. But when that page is created, it now exists at the same name. Previously, you would have an entry with target namespace and target title for each page link and file link and template link and category link. And now some of that is being deduplicated. As part of the migration to multi-blocks that is being created, the IP blocks table has been split up into block target and block, which will allow multiple blocks for a single target. The migration goes from the original schema with some data to creating the new schema, populating it, and then dropping the old one. So for migrating the logging table to use actors, this would be adding log user, or log actor, populating it, and then dropping log user and log user text. We'll talk about how the foundation does those, but they're pretty slow migrations depending on the size of your wiki. Read-only time is time where editing and other actions that would alter the database is blocked. Thinking back to my previous presentation about where I talked about different HTTP methods, most of the things you would do with the post method, where you try and alter something, would be prohibited in read-only. You can still log in, and that would be with a post request, but you couldn't create an account because that needs to update the database. Can't edit a page because that updates the database. Separately, downtime would be time that the wiki is entirely inaccessible. You can't even read the pages. When it's read-only, you can read. When it's down completely, you might get a nice error message depending on what infrastructure is set up, but you can't access any of the contents. A database dump would be a copy of the wiki's database table. This holds the data on the wiki. You might want to include all of the tables in that. You could also say some of the tables are generated from others. The list of template links, for example. You could generate that by parsing every page, again, if you wanted to. Probably don't, but a database dump does not necessarily need to include everything as long as it has enough data that you can extract the rest. You could parse every page to see what category it's in, so you don't necessarily need the category links. Finally, update.php is a maintenance script that updates the schema for new versions of MediaWiki. It's called update.php because that is the file name, but it's not supposed to be run as just php update.php anymore. I believe you now invoke it with php maintenance/run update because they're migrating away from just running these scripts directly. Now that we have a common set of terms, let's talk about how the Wikimedia Foundation, and this is again my understanding as an outside observer, how they reduce downtime when they need to do a schema change. As far as I can tell, they have zero downtime. You will always be able to read the pages. If you're logged out, they're probably cached, but the infrastructure is set up such that there are no times when you just get a blank screen or a 503 or 504, some other error. If you do, please file a bug report, I assume. They also have very minimal read-only time. The Wikimedia Foundation has a whole bunch of database servers, and when they want to apply a schema change, they only apply it to servers that are not active, except for the most trivial ones. So they take out a replica server, they turn off replication, they apply the changes, and then they put it back in. Again, they have multiple database servers. And so they've written the code to apply the schema changes, but they're not using it yet. For the actor migration, for example, they would start in each of the database hosts adding rev actor and log actor and not using them yet. For most client wikis of ours, once you update to the new version, all of the database handling is using the new version of the code. And before you update, you're using the old version. But because the alterations take so long to roll out for Foundation wikis, they need schema compatibility configuration. They say, okay, we've created the new columns, but not everywhere, so we're only going to write to the old ones. And then once it's everywhere, then they start writing to both columns. And while they're doing that, you populate all of the old data that wasn't written to the new columns. And then you stop writing to the old columns before you start dropping them. There's a whole database team that manages this. And they have it down as far as I can tell. There's a quote I found from the WikiTeq, WikiTeq page about how to do a schema change. Not with update.php. On the other hand, for clients of ours, there are a couple options. If we wanted to do zero downtime and very minimal read-only, we could just copy what the Foundation does. Have 10 different database hosts and manually stop replication on each one and apply the handcrafted, free-range, non-GMO SQL statements that will alter it. But that would be hard, and it would be a lot of work. An option that reduces the time for read-only while making sure that you don't break things is you turn on read-only, so there's no new data coming in, and then with a copy of the data that was already there, somewhere else in a local wiki, you run update.php. And then, having confirmed that nothing broke, you pull it back onto the production server. This results in the slightly more time compared to the third option, more time where the wiki would be in read-only, but it means that during the read-only time, the wiki is running, say, 1.39 code with the 1.39 database, and afterwards it's running 1.43 with the 1.43 database, and it's not stuck in the middle, leading to downtime and breakage. On the other hand, the simplest option is just run update.php. It will be slow if you have too big of a database, but it'll be the simplest. You won't have to download and upload and turn on read-only and remember to turn it back off, because MediaWiki will just break if someone tries to edit when they're not allowed to. Now, update.php is the simplest option when you are upgrading from a version that update.php supports. It's probably enough, and that's because within the last 2 long-term support versions, the MediaWiki requirements for MySQL and for PHP are less likely to have changed. Odds are, if you're upgrading from 1.39 to 1.43, a PHP version that 1.39 supports is probably also going to be supported by 1.43. It's not guaranteed, because they do eventually drop them, but it's less likely to change. Same with the version of MySQL that you're running. When you're upgrading from more than 2 long-term support versions, you can't use update.php. For one thing, since 1.36, update.php has only supported upgrades from the last 2 long-term support releases. You cannot upgrade from 1.34 to 1.43. So, you need a temporary wiki. You need somewhere that's running, say, 1.39, where you import your database, update it to 1.39, and then update it to 1.43. You can do it on temporary wiki. You could also do it live on production, but you shouldn't test in production, and you probably shouldn't do this in production. Another reason you might want a temporary wiki, environmental compatibility is less likely. If you're upgrading from, say, 1.17, I think we had a client from that recently, there's no way that's going to support PHP 8.3. It won't even support PHP 8.0. You're not going to find a version of PHP that, even if you had the update script worked, you're not going to find a version of PHP that will support both the old and the new wiki. You need to import it somewhere. And while less likely, I don't think the MySQL requirements change as frequently, you might also run into an issue there. I point out MySQL, but the same applies to SQLite and Postgres. And if you're using, was it Oracle DB and some Microsoft one, support for those database backends was dropped a while ago. So if you're using one of those, you just can't upgrade. You would need to somehow convert it. Now, if you're running update.php, you're not handcrafting your SQL statements, you might run into a pitfall with the actor migration. When I created a temporary wiki for one of our clients and ran this, I came across this issue. If I had run this update.php in production, we would have permanently lost data. Why? In 1.31, a script called migrate actors was added. This is used to populate the new actor columns, creating the data in rev actor and log actor and archive AR actor, populating that based on the user ID and user text fields. Sometimes you might get a warning. If there is a value for a username that is valid, but no user ID associated with that, it's unclear what actor should be associated. So you get a warning. Run, or username name is usable, so it can't create an anonymous user. It won't use an actor with user ID 0. So then it says, run this cleanup script to fix the situation. Now, in update.php, it'll spit out those warnings and then just continue. You would only have a chance to address that either if you're not upgrading too far, or if you are running the migration manually, like you would do on a foundation server. In the 1.34 update, it started dropping the old user fields, the place where that data was before the actor migration. And if the actor migration failed, it would be the place where that data was before it was just deleted. And in 1.35, the other non-actor fields for revision user ID and revision user text were dropped. So if you just run update.php to 1.35, you could lose data. This is why before any database update, you should have a backup, but especially before schema migrations like this. There's no way to recover that data unless you, I don't know, check the bin logs or something. But for most people, there is no reasonable way to try and recover that data. And so, if you want to be doing the updates with update.php, the easiest thing is to do incremental updates. In Vienna, I talked about not targeting long-term support releases and doing the update every 6 months. But if that's not feasible, at least upgrade every new LTS, because when you get to too big of a gap, if you were upgrading from before 1.31 to after, say, 1.34, you would potentially lose data. Which brings me to the second part, make backups. Backups are your friend. Having lost all of my files at the start of senior year of undergrad, I could tell you they are your big friend. It's not fun having to restart a thesis, but I had only been working on it for a month and I knew what I needed to put back. If you lose your entire wiki, you'd probably be slightly more annoyed. Any questions?
Have you ever had to deal with a worst case scenario where calling some kind of script seems to be impossible, whether it's because the database is no longer supported or it's just too big a gap or something, and you've had to do it with, creating a dump of all the data and XML data and trying to import it back into the new wiki, that sort of thing?
So, if I understand the question correctly, it's have I ever had the update go wrong and I need to manually try and recreate the data, not from a SQL migration? So I've been lucky enough not to need to do that. The worst I've needed was, I think we had a client from 1.17 where we needed to create a temporary wiki and import it and get those errors, and then I had to manually step through and, okay, I will do the manual updates to add the new columns and then run the migration. But I don't know that I've ever lost the SQL or been unable to use the SQL and needed to do an XML export and re-import. But if you are trying to update from a database backend that is no longer supported, that's probably the way to do it. You would make an export of all of your content, and I don't know how you would migrate things like log entries or user preferences. But or accounts. Rich, did you have a question? Anyone else? Anyone on YouTube or Zoom or wherever we are? Amber, any questions? Yes.
Are you worried, since you did talk about update.php, that Rowan is going to take a flight to San Francisco to come harangue you?
No, for a couple of reasons. The first is that I'm not in the San Francisco area. I don't live there. So if Rowan wanted to take a flight to do that, you're welcome to, but it would be a pretty long drive to where I am. The other is that warning was to not run it. Oh, I thought the warning was just don't run it on Foundation servers, but that's not what he said. So now I am slightly worried. Thank you for that. It's gonna bug me. Please don't slap me. I'm a nice person, I think, I hope.
He was talking about the fact that you should be running, what is it, run.php instead, no? Oh, he wasn't? That's not what he's, okay.
So this warning predates the addition of run.php, and this is about don't run it on Foundation servers because no, just don't. It'll.
We should get RM updated PHP.
So there's a history of update.php having some issues that in Foundation servers specifically because they're not meant to be done with update.php. Update.php is a very brute force. I will take whatever the current primary database is and I will alter it. And I will drop tables, or it will drop tables and add tables. And when you have tables the size that are used on the Foundation servers and of the amount of replication used on the data on the Foundation servers, it'll just be a problem. There's also a maintenance script called SQL.php that's used for testing out, to allow testing out live SQL chain. You can run queries yourself. And there was a bug at one point where accidentally some of the code from update.php, specifically around extension updates, was being applied if you started SQL.php, and it shouldn't have. This led to an outage when a huge Wikidata table was accidentally dropped, and it had to be recreated from scratch. I'm an outsider. I'm just what I've read, but it caused a problem, and this is just from one of the extension tables, so I can't imagine what would happen for core. So my understanding is this warning is just for Foundation servers, and it's not because you're supposed to do it a different way, but because you're not supposed to do it at all.
Yeah, I mean, on our larger wikis, running update.php even when there's no changes takes several minutes. Like, I would imagine on Wikipedia, if you hit go on it, you could get on the plane and slide it before.
So just to repeat that for the people on the live stream, someone was saying that on their large wikis, even if update.php has no changes, it still takes several minutes. So if it was run on the Foundation servers, it would run long enough that I could start it and then Rowan could get on the plane, come to me and slap me before it finished, if I understood correctly. Any other questions?
Sorry to monopolize it. Just a small detail. I'm pretty sure you talked about the comment refactoring at the beginning. I'm pretty sure that did not involve having to have unique comments for every commit. If that's what you're saying.
So my understanding of the comment table is that it's not entirely unique in that because so many edits are made so quickly. There isn't a unique index on the content, but it's for a majority of cases, comments that already exist in the database will reuse the existing comment ID instead of creating a new one. For the 1,000 times that you make an edit with the summary, fixed a typo, at least 900 of those will use an existing ID. I would assume all 1,000. I don't know the entire rationale behind not forcing that to be unique. My guess is they wanted to avoid race conditions, but the comments table does have comment ID fields that are referenced by edits. Rich?
Thank you, Daniel. So this is a comment just because you came back to this slide when you were delivering your presentation. And I think it was on the first bullet, you used a word about deduplication. And do you remember that?
Yes.
And I just wanted to say thank you because I have added that word to my vocabulary, to deduplicate. Okay.
So yes, deduplication is the reason for the addition of the actor table and the comment table. Actor also involved the ability to rename users with a lot of edits. You don't often rename comments. I don't know that you can, but comment table does help reduce storage by trying to only store every edit summary once or twice if needed. So yes, the goal of that was to deduplicate the data. So the string "I fixed a typo" exists once, and it's just referenced by comment ID every time it's needed. Any other questions, comments, concerns, compliments?
You're such a handsome boy.
My dad is in the area, but I didn't see him walk in, so I was confused for a second there. Anyone else? Okay.